Hello, this is a video on how to play the card game Yaniv. Um, Yaniv is a different card game. Um, it's not similar to really any other card game. Um, but the point of Yaniv is that it is a fast-moving card game, meaning it's essentially played amongst people who enjoy fast-paced games. And so do note that Yaniv can be played between anywhere from 2 to 8 players. However, Yaniv is meant to be a fast-paced card game, and so if you play um, with more than, I guess, if you play with a larger number of players, then you'll have and let's just talk about this in a second. And so if you play with a larger number of players, then the game will be slower paced, right? That's just natural. The more players you have, the more turns you have to take, the game is slower paced. And so, even though you can play with up to 8 players, it's sort of counterintuitive to the pace of the game. And so, Yaniv is played using a 54 card deck. And so, this is your standard 52 card deck, but you do not remove the jokers. You keep them in, making it a 54 card deck. Do note that if you play with more than 3 players, you have to use 2 decks. And so in this case, we're playing with 1, 2, 3, 4. And so since we're playing with more than 3 players, right, we're playing with 4 players, we do have to use an additional 54 card deck. Cards are ranked as follows from high to low: ace, king, queen, jack, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And so it's the standard ranking of most card games, right? Ace being the highest, 2 being the lowest. Each card in the deck has a specific value. And so that's how they're ranked, but they also have a point value. And so jokers have a point value of 0. Aces have a point value of 1, which is counterintuitive. Even though they are the highest ranked, their point value is 1. The cards 2 through 10, the point value is the value of the card. And so, for example, the card 5 has a point value of 5, right? A card of 7 has a point value of 7. And then your face cards, so your jack, your queen, and your king, have a value of 10. And so there's a number of different ways players like to determine seating positions. Do note that Yaniv is a card game played by people traveling, right? And so think about, I guess, if traders who used to travel long distances, or just travelers who travel along the world, it's sort of their game. And so, I mean, obviously, if you travel around the world, you talk to different people. There's different ways in which you can play the game, right? So there's no standardized set of rules here, but we're just going with the most common set of rules. But it's extremely common to play Yaniv with a group of people, and they'll introduce some rules you've never heard of. And so you have to determine where to sit as well as the first dealer. The common method is just drawing cards, right? And so the player who draws the highest value card would get the first choice of seats at the table, and they'd also become the dealer. The player drawing the second highest takes, I guess, the second choice of sitting at the table, and then so on until all players are seated at the table. So once the first dealer is determined, he shuffles and then offers the player to his immediate right the option to cut. Cutting being, think about taking the deck and cutting it with a knife, for example, right? You'd cut it and you split it at an exact certain point. And then after you cut it, you just start dealing both, I guess, cuts, right? So you deal one cut and then you deal the other. And so cards are dealt in a clockwise direction around the table, one at a time, face down until each player has 5 cards. And so note, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards here, right? And so let's sum up. What have we talked about so far? 2 to 8 players. We talked about the scoring system. The ranking is normal. Scoring Jokers are 0, aces are 1, 2 through 10 is face value, and the face cards, so your jack, your queen, and your king, have a point value of 10. And now we talked about how you assign sitting at the table, right? The player who draws the highest card gets the first choice of sitting and becomes the first dealer. The player who draws the second highest card gets the second choice of sitting, so on and so forth. And then 5 cards to each player, one at a time. The remainder of the deck is placed face down in the center as a draw pile. And so I'm just going to resume here, right? And if you note that, right, I guess the draw pile is placed right here. And so my turn will run out, as you can see, right? There's a clock there because this is a fast-paced game. And so my turn will run out, I believe, eventually. And so we'll just let it go, and so you can sort of see what's happening as you observe. In this case, I don't think it's running out, and so that's fine. And so what you'll have to do is you turn over the top card of the draw pile. In this case, it's the king of spades, right? So you take the top card of the draw pile, you turn it over. This is standard for many card games. And then you place it beside the draw pile. This starts the play pile. So this is the draw pile, face down, play pile, face up. Players then pick up their 5-card hand and look at it. So here we have our 5-card hand here. In this case, the first player and second player only have 4 cards because they played some. Alright, the third player still has 5 cards. And so the dealer has the first turn on the first hand. In each subsequent round, the winner of the previous hand becomes the dealer and has the first turn. And so on each player's turn, you can do 2 things. You can make a play to the table consisting of 1 or more cards. This is called throwing cards. That's exactly what you see here. Notice how these cards are scattered in quite a messy fashion. So these players simply threw cards here, right? It's called throwing cards. And obviously, if you want to keep your deck of cards intact, I don't recommend throwing it, right? But obviously, this is meant to be a fast-paced game, right? And so that's why players would throw their cards. Obviously, you can place them as well. That's not going to change anything. But when making a play to the table, you first display the cards on the table. Recording issue there. But we're back. And so what's the objective of Yaniv, right? You want to keep your hand as low as possible. So I guess discard cards or throw cards into the dump pile that are high value, and then call Yaniv if you believe that the total value of your hand is less than that of any other player. Do note that you can only call Yaniv if the total value of your cards is less than 6. So even if I say, okay, the value of my hand, in this case, right, ace is worth 1, the 6 is worth 6, this is worth 6, right? So 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 6 is 13, plus 7 is 20, plus 10 is 30. And so even if I say, okay, the value of my hand is 30, that's less than every other player, I can't call Yaniv. I have to wait until the value of my hand is not only less than any other player, right? Because I want to make sure it's less than every other player. I also have to wait until the value of my hand is less than 6. And so what can you throw? A player can throw any card, a singular card, one set of 2 or more cards of the same rank, and so I could throw down 2 2s, or 2 9s, or 3 kings, right? So if 2 cards are matching in rank, it doesn't matter, you can throw them all down at the same time. Or you can throw down a sequence of 3 or more consecutive cards in the same suit. For example, a 4 of hearts, a 4 of spades, and then a 5 of spades, and then a 6 of spades, right? That's a sequence of 3 or more cards in the same suit consecutively, and so you can also throw that down. Do note that in sequences, even though in card ranks aces are highest, in sequences aces are treated as low. And so if you have an ace in a sequence, that means ace 2 3 would be your sequence, because aces are low. Queen, king, ace could not be a sequence, because in a sequence aces are treated low. It's just it's just how the game is. Do note that the joker has a power and that it can be used in a sequence as a substitute. And so if I have a 6 and an 8 of spades, then I could go 6 of spades, Joker, 8 of spades. And the Joker would act as the 7 of spades. It substitutes, right, for any other card in the sequence. No matter how many cards you throw, you pick up just one card. And so it's beneficial to try to throw as many cards as you can. And so, give me a second here. My controls aren't working. So note that we threw, I got cut out a bit, but we threw down our 2 6s there, right? Because you can throw down any 2 matching cards. And then we picked up from the draw pile, we picked up a 3 of diamonds. Now, the cards that can be picked up, you can either pick up the top card in the draw pile, or you can pick up one of the cards in the dump pile. And so, do note that if a player, I guess, let's say, played multiple cards in the dump pile, you can only pick up the card on the top or the bottom. And so if I played a 6, 7, 8 sequence, I could either pick up the 6 or pick up the 8, right? And I pick up the card at the top or the bottom. And so do note that, I guess, if you threw down a set, right? So if you threw down an 8 of clubs, an 8 of hearts, or an 8 of spades, you could pick up the 8 of clubs or the 8 of spades, but not the 8 of hearts because it is in the middle. Do note that only one card or combination can be thrown in a turn. So if I have 2 7s, I can throw them both down. If I have 2 5s, I can throw them both down. But if I have 2 5 7s and 2 5s, I have to pick one of the two. Note that you always throw down a card before you pick up another card. And so note that when you have 5 or fewer points, right? Because remember what I said at the start, you have to have under 6, right? Under 6 meaning 5 or less, then you call Yaniv. And so that's what we're going to keep doing. We are going to keep playing until we can call Yaniv. I'm going to get rid of my king. Why? My king has a high point value. So what we'll do is we'll draw. So now we have double queens. We don't want to pick those up, and so what we're going to do is we're going to draw. And so you might say, okay, what cards end up here? Right? You throw cards down there. How are cards ending up here? The cards that end up here are either if you threw a singular card, the singular card that's the player before you threw. Or if the player before you threw a combination, the top and the bottom of the combination. In this case, the third player threw down a 4 of spades and a 4 of clubs. Thus, there's no top or bottom, really, right? Because if you have 2 cards, one's the top, one's the bottom. There's no cards in between. And so both cards here show up, and I could draw either one of these. If I played, and what we'll do here is we'll actually play the 7, right? We'll play the 7. Yeah, so we'll play the 7, and we'll draw. So I'm going to play the 7, and look, notice how this is a card that's glowing, and now notice how she played 2 4s. That means the third player can either take the 2 4s or draw from the deck. Now I could either take the 9 or draw from the deck. I'm going to play these 2 3s. Drawing from, and now those 2 3s were available, right? And so the card that the last player plays, you could either draw that, and so the third player played a 9 of spades. I could either draw from the draw pile or draw the card that the player before you played. And so let's sum up. What's the objective of Yaniv? The objective is to get the value of your hand under 6. So that's 5 or fewer, and then call Yaniv. You do this by discarding or throwing cards in the middle, right? You could throw a single, a pair, a triple, whatever, as long as they're the same rank, or you can throw a sequence, as long as they're consecutive and in the same suit. you can draw. You end your turn by drawing a card. You can either draw the card that the player before you played, if they played a singular card. If the player before you played a combination, you can draw either the top or the bottom card of the combination, or you can draw from the draw pile. And that's literally it. It's that simple. And the ace only has a value of 1. Even though it's the highest ranking, right, it only has a value of 1 in your hand. Notice how my hand sum is 11. 10 from the 10 of clubs, and 1 from the ace of diamonds. And so I'm going to discard this 10. That'll get my hand value lower. And so I drew a king again. And so unfortunately, the value of my hand is still above 11. And so what happened there? The second player called Yaniv, right? Because notice how the second player had, I don't know if you noticed, right? In the top left there, the second player had a 2 and another 2, right? That's 4. That's less than 6. So they called Yaniv. And so if at the start of the turn you have 5 points or fewer in your hand and you think you have the lowest total, you may call Yaniv. This ends the play and everybody exposes their cards. And then note that you are not obliged to call when your total is 5 or less, right? And so you can throw and pick up if you wish, and play continues. So even though the second player had less than 5, he could have still waited. Do note that you can only call Yaniv at the beginning of your own turn. If during your turn you don't call Yaniv, while other players are going, you cannot call Yaniv. After throwing and picking up, if you think you have the lowest total, you must wait until the beginning of your next turn in order to end the play. If the drawing deck is empty, all the cards of the dump pile are shuffled and stacked to make a new drawing deck. And so the objective of Yaniv is to score the fewest amount of points. And so you actually, in particular, want to keep your number of points under 200. And so when someone uses their turn to end the play, all players immediately reveal their cards. So notice how the second player called Yaniv, all of us had our cards showing, right? If the caller, in this case the second player, succeeded, they indeed had the lowest number of points in their cards, the caller scores 0 points, and the other players score as many points as they have in their hands. And so you also want to keep the value of your hand low. That way, if another player calls Yaniv, you won't be penalized for having cards in your hand, right? Well, you will, but not as highly as if you had, let's say, high value cards in your hand. If any other player has the same number of points or fewer points than the caller scores 30 penalty points plus whatever they had in their hand, and the other player score whatever they had in their hands as points. And so let's say second player, right, he had a value of 4, he had 2 2s, but I had my hand value of 1, right? Obviously in this case it was 11, but I had 1. Then the second player would score 30 penalty points as well as what they had in their hand, along with every other player. And so if the player who calls Yaniv incorrectly calls Yaniv, meaning they don't have the lowest hand total in terms of point value, then they score 30 points plus the value of their hand, and every other player also scores the value of their hand as well. Even the player who in actuality had the lowest hand value, they also score the value of their hand. And so the player with the lowest card point total starts the next round, and so in this case the second player would start the next round, right there. If 2 or more players had the equally low totals, then you just randomly decide, right, like a rock, paper, scissors or something like that, of who would start the next round. Any player who obtains more than 200 points is eliminated from the game. Do note, if you have more than 200, you are eliminated from the game. And so, one more thing that can happen, and I know we're talking a lot here, but one more thing that can happen is 2 players can lose, right? And so, remember that if a player incorrectly calls Yaniv, every player has to score the value of their hand, and the player who incorrectly calls scores 30 points, right? In this case, 2 players can simultaneously or the last two players, right? Like this would happen if the last two players remaining, or whatever number of players, um, are all eliminated at the same time. Then they'd have to play another round, right? Because let's say you had two players at 198, 198, and one of them incorrectly calls Yaniv. Well, then he would score 30 points extra, putting him above 200. And the other player would also score the value of their hand, putting them above 200. And so then they'd play another round, resetting their scores, not counting the points. So they'd go at 198, 198, and then they'd play another round again. So that's a lot to take in. How do you play Yaniv? How do you play Yaniv? 5 cards to each player, right? Cards are ranked normally with point values. Jokers are worth 0, aces are worth 1, 2 through 10 is face value, jacks, queens, kings are worth 10. You can either throw a card in the dump pile, and you end your turn by either drawing a card from the draw pile or the previous or from the dump pile. The card that the previous player played. If they played 3 or more cards, you draw the top or the bottom card of the combination. So let me just talk about this. I'm gonna play 3 queens here, and we'll draw. The first player only has the option of picking up either the top or the bottom queen. And so hopefully you can just sort of see, right? The objective is to keep the value of your hand under 5 and then call Yaniv, and to keep the overall value of your points under 200. I think I've talked enough, and so what we're going to do is I'm just going to play, so you can hopefully see. And so observe what's happening here. I do need to select cards to throw. So I drew a singular card, right? Remember, you can only always draw a singular card. And so why did I do that? Well, look at my strategy here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do that and pick up a singular card. Now the value of my hand is less than 6, right? It's 5 or less. You just need the value of your hand to be 5 or less. We are going to call Yaniv. Look at the value of every other player's hand. We indeed have the lowest hand, and so we scored 0 points. Every other player scores the value of the cards in their hand. So let's go fast pace. Come on, come on, come on. I say I'm not going to talk, but I do feel like there's some things I need to touch on, which is why I do. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of this 9, pick up this 10. That allows us to discard both of those next round. Notice how fast-paced this is. Oops. Remember, you always play a card before you pick up a card. That's a 9. I'm going to play my 6, pick up that 9. That way I can play these 2 9s next time. I'm going to play these 2 9s and then pick up a 2, right? Because that's quite low value. That'll reduce the value of my hand. I'll play this 4. And okay, this is beautiful. Now, we can play both of these. And I was just trying to risk it there. But that happens sometimes. So what we'll have to do is we'll actually have to play out a 7, try to risk it again. We're a lower value card. And so do note that I believe the second player there might be able to call Yaniv. And so I'm 6, right? But remember, you have to be less than 6. And so you can't call Yaniv on 6. You have to be less than 6. So she called Yaniv. She was right. Everybody else scores the value of their hand. In this case, it wasn't that bad for us. So we're gonna keep playing. Let's go. Let's go. 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 Let's try to get through this. Let's try. I want to show you guys that it's a fast-paced game. Rid of the jack. 1-4. Beautiful. If this goes our way, we should be able to call Yaniv here. Depending on how everybody else plays. Nope, never mind. That 10 is quite annoying. So you have to look at the cards that other players have and see, hey, is it worth it? Notice how I got greedy there, right? I didn't want those 6s, and I took it, and I got a king instead. And so I wasn't able to reduce the value of my hand. So second player called Yaniv again, and this is just not good for us. So let's play another round here. What can we play here? I want to keep these lower value cards. So I'm going to play my 8 here. Try to draw a card from the deck, and it backfired. We got an even higher value card, right? That's just what happens. You have to risk it. This card's face up, so you know the value of the card you're getting here. Try to risk it to try to get a lower value card. In this case, I want to try to get a lower value card, and it did not work. Once again, it did not work. We picked up a queen. I'm going to throw that, take that 5, right? Because the 5 is very, very low value compared to my other hand. Throw down 2 5s and pick up an ace. Beautiful, beautiful. This is not good for me. Need to get rid of this 10 and pick up a low value card while I do it. Nope. The sum of my hand remains the same. This guy or this gal are both going to call Yaniv, I believe. Take that 4. Yeah. So they called Yaniv. Once again, I scored what I have. And so I mean, this is sort of, you're just sort of seeing a play here, right? But this will take about 5 to 10 more minutes here. Once again, the player who calls Yaniv successfully, aka the player with the lowest score, plays the next one. I can get rid of both of these, right, by discarding them. And that's my strategy. Here. I got another jack again, so that didn't really work out. Oh yeah, that worked out there. That's a 9. So what I'll do is I'll play that 8, take that 9. I'll be able to play both of those 9s there and take another card. Yes. I'll be able to play both of those 9s and pick up that 6. Then I'll be able to play both of those 6s and hopefully pick up another card. Let's see, play both of those 6s. Yes! Yes. Beautiful. Now we just need to get rid of, hopefully, this 5. Yes. Okay. So, if everything goes smoothly on my turn, I will be able to call Yaniv. Unless the third player calls Yaniv. And I'll call Yaniv. Oh no! What happened? Let's talk about what happened here. Okay. Okay, it's actually good that popped up, and I think we'll end it after I talk about this. So I called Yaniv, right? And I didn't even have the lowest card value. And so not only did I score the value of my hand, which was an ace plus a 4, right? So that's 5. I also scored 30 penalty points. So in total, 35. In this case, I guess we're playing with a variation where the player who has the lowest value doesn't actually score any points. And so it's up to you. I guess generally for simplicity, the player with the lowest hand value in any round, regardless of whether or not they call Yaniv, they'll score 0 points, right? And so I called Yaniv even when I didn't have the lowest hand value, and so I got penalized for it. And so that wraps up how to play Yaniv. Remember, you want to try to keep the value of your hand as low as possible in order to obtain the lowest score. You call Yaniv when you have a score of 5 or less. You either throw cards in the middle, and you can either end your turn by drawing a card from the draw pile or from the dump pile, aka drawing the card of the player who previously played. But that wraps up how to play Yaniv. It's quite simple. It's fun.